And in a sense, in the religious bigotry of the day and of the area, they became the enemy. We were segregated.
Well, I went to a Catholic school in the Catholic education all my life, as my children have. They play with their neighbours and their friends just the same as everybody else does. I don't see how that makes any difference. Catholic schools now, to my certain knowledge, have up to 10% of their intake non-Catholics. In the local schools in my area, we've got Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, a whole range of folk in our faith-educated schools.
Could I just make a very important point, I think, which is that when you have a faith school belonging to a very large group, a majority or a semi-majority, you can take in other faiths. But if you have a faith school which is a minority faith school, then you will not have that mixing. So if we're talking about Bradford's situation, it's particularly stated in that case that the children have been separated and that their educational attainment is much lower, their employment record is much lower, and we have to ask ourselves, what are the factors?
Well, let me bring in now someone who's at the front end of this. Rosalind Goulden, you run a Jewish school in North London, I think it is. That's right. A lot of us would feel that since we have to live and work together in future life, all races, all ethnic backgrounds, increasingly we're a multicultural society. So since we're going to have to do that in later life, shouldn't we learn to do that as children at the same school?
I think that children can learn to mix better in a wider society once they actually are very firm in their faith. The whole idea of faith schools is about having an opportunity for children to learn their faith more rigorously, more frequently than they would otherwise have. The reason that there are so many Jewish day schools now is that parents find that any other system of Jewish education has not been successful. So the motivation is not actually to keep children separate. The motivation is to give children more opportunity to learn their faith, their culture, their heritage and a language. And that cannot be done in a part-time class after school.
Even if in some cases it encourages divisions that result in a less harmonious society.
I'm not sure that all the evils of society should be blamed on schools. I don't think that schools should be the main agencies of social engineering. Schools have become a political football. They're not there just to serve the whims of particular politicians. Schools are there to educate children. The main business of schools is pupil learning and pupil development, and
yeah, but you know what the Jesuits say, give me a child at 7, I've got one for life. This is a slightly idealistic. I'm slightly amazed at you, Carrie Pollard, nodding your head when our school teacher here has said that it's not the purpose of education to be involved in social engineering. It's been your party's policy for 50 years. Let me put this point to you, that let's accept your argument that segregated schools don't cause religious discrimination or problems. But the evidence from places like Belfast and Glasgow is that faith-based schools, they pass on the bigotry from generation to generation. They might not have caused it, but they keep it going. Look at these youngsters in Northern Ireland. I accept that in Northern Ireland there's a particular difficulty, but it still starts with the parents themselves. If they don't get their minds around it, the schools can do nothing about that at all. It starts with the parents. The parents must get their act together. They must think peace, breathe, sleep, eat peace, and then their children will do the same. And then when schools, when the parents themselves and the community want to have schools that are together, well, that's fine. Right. Currently, they want schools that are separate. Sheila Flather, the reason why a lot of parents want to send their kids to these faith-based schools is that they sometimes look at the local comprehensive and they're appalled by the standards and by the conditions. And they look at these faith schools. Not all of them are great, but some of them are at least better than the only other alternative.
I agree with that.
So what's wrong with it?
I think Church of England schools, a lot of them, are far more popular, and even Catholic schools are more popular. The ones who take in children of all denominations, etc., are more popular than other schools. But I would say that faith schools are responsible for social engineering of a sort as well. And if you think about it, in France there's no religion in schools. I would say we don't need any kind of religious schools. It's a historical happening that we have